A warm welcome to Diski Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I ask that you please subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things Bafana Bafana as Hugo Broos has announced his squad that will do battle in the World Cup Qualifiers. So, with regards then to this episode, we're going to do things a bit differently. So, I ask that you guys just please bear with me as I will use my phone to read out all the names that have been called up to this squad. So, we will then start with the goalkeeping department. So, 4 goalkeepers have been called up. So, we've got Ronwen Williams, Veli Motwa, Broos, and Mlungwane. So, with regards then to these 4 goalkeepers, I'll start with Ronwen Williams. So, Ronwen Williams, in my opinion, he isn't our best goalkeeper, but he has been our most consistent goalkeeper with regards to game time and his performances. However, I just don't think that he should be our number 1. He is a very good goalkeeper, very experienced as well. However, I just feel like there are other options that we should be looking at. The only issue, though, with our other options is that they don't play regularly at their clubs. However, that is something that I will go into depth a bit later on. So, moving on then to the next goalkeeper, who does go by the name of Veli Motwa. This is a very, very experienced man who plies his trade at AmaZulu, who has done really well in the past couple of seasons. And he's been growing in stature and he's been very consistent for both AmaZulu and for Bafana Bafana whenever he's been called up. And then when we have a look at Mlungwane, Mlungwane did represent the under-23 national team at the Olympics. And he's also another player who's growing in stature. And I've thoroughly enjoyed his performances at Golden Arrows and how he commands his back line and his 18-yard box. I think this is a goalkeeper who can grow within the national team setup and go on to make a name for himself. Moving on then right along to the next goalkeeper who goes by the name of Broos. So Broos, with regards to all of these goalkeepers, I think he's the best out of all of them. However, the downside with Broos, like I did touch on earlier on, was the fact that he does not play regularly. And that's where the problem then is with a player like Broos. You know, very good goalkeeper and very good distribution. And there's also a leader within Broos. He is a potential captain, in my opinion. So he's got all the facets and all the makings of a great goalkeeper that could go on one day and become the national team captain and captain for Kaizer Chiefs itself. However, he just doesn't play regularly. So that then doesn't really bode well for him when it comes to him holding down a regular starting berth for the national team. Then, when we then have a look at a player who has not been called up by virtue of the fact that he also doesn't play regularly, Ricardo Goss. This is a goalkeeper, in my opinion, who I think if he did play regularly, he would be South Africa's number 1. And I say that because when you have a look at his skill set and you have a look at both the tactical and the technical with regards to him, he is a complete goalkeeper. And I just think it's a pity that he doesn't play regularly because this then is affecting the national team as well, not just him as an individual. But when we then have a look at the 4 goalkeepers, we've got Ronwen Williams, we've got Mlungwane, we've got Broos, and we have Veli Motwa. So at home, please do let me know, what do you guys make of the goalkeepers that have been selected for Bafana Bafana with regards to the World Cup qualifiers? Are you guys happy with our goalkeeping department, or are there other goalkeepers do you think they should have went with? So moving on then to the next segment, the defenders, the men who are responsible for keeping out the goals. So, with regards to the defenders then, we've got Ngcobo, we've got Reuck, we've got Thapelo Morena, we've got Sianda Xulu, we've got Tibang Pete, we've got Tabani Dube, we've got Ngcobo, we've got Musa Lebusa, Mabiliso, and Innocent Mayela. So thoroughly excited to see that Rushin Reuck, Tabani Dube, and Ngcobo have gotten the nod, especially after their impressive displays at the COSAFA Cup. You know, as we do know that in previous times where we'd have players who'd perform really well at COSAFA Cup or perform really well in the friendlies, but then wouldn't be called up when it is the qualifiers. And I think these three defenders are deserving of the call-up. And when you look at Ngcobo and Dube, it's also a bit of a tricky situation with them because they don't play regularly for Kaizer Chiefs. And a lot of people have argued that that should be the centre-back pairing for Kaizer Chiefs, which then would bode really well for the national team because they could then slot in potentially as a pair. However, happy for those three names because I think these are players that we should be building the team around and building a spine consisting of quality centre halves of those three players. And then, yes, of course, Musa Lebusa, another quality centre half. Very excited. And Pete as well, you know, who plays abroad. Always exciting then to see him getting called up to the national team. However, it does remain to be seen if he will get his chance. Thoroughly happy with the selection overall. The only qualm I have, and my biggest question is, where is Lyle Lekay? I don't understand how Innocent Mayela and Mabiliso get the nod ahead of a Lyle Lekay, especially considering the fact that Lyle Lekay has been the most consistent left back or left wing back in the country in the past year. And when you look at how complete his skill set is and how versatile he is as a left-sided player, very solid defensively. And then going forward, we do know what Lyle Lekay can give you. He's got the goals, he's got the assists, and in the previous DStv Premiership season, he had 5 assists and 4 goals in 24 appearances. And that is quite impressive for a left-sided defensive player. And when you look at those numbers, some midfielders don't even post those numbers. And that's what Lyle Lekay gives you. And dead piece situation, very good at that. And standard play as well, very good in open play. He can also score you a goal from far out, and very good with his delivery from out wide. He is a player who operates in this channel, and what I like about him is that he can make this channel his very own. However, we do know that he has been omitted and won't form part and parcel of this Bafana Bafana side. So what do you guys then make of Lyle Lekay's omission? Do you think that it's substantiated by virtue of the fact that you've got Mayela and Mabiliso, or do you guys feel like Lyle Lekay should have been in this national team squad? Moving on then right along to the midfielders. So in midfield, we've got Korisang, we've got Mbule, we've got Mokoena, Mutobi Mvala, Spelele Mkulisi, we've got Spelelo Sitole, who does ply his trade in Portugal. For those of you who might not know who Sitole is a midfielder who plays in Portugal. We've got Jabulo Blom, we've got Ethan Brooks, we've got Sitebe, and Yusuf Mart. So with regards then to the midfielders, this is where I was very excited when I read out the midfield selection. And I say that because it's been a very long time since Bafana Bafana had a coach who's got a backbone to leave out some of the biggest names and who's able to stand firm and stand tall and say, these are the men that I'm going to pick. These are the men who are going to do battle for me. So very excited then to see Mokoena, very excited to see Mbule, Mkulisi. I mean, these are players who I've been calling for to be a part and parcel of the national team, not just for them to just add numbers with regards to the national team, but can we build a team around them? Can we have a solid spine where we've got Mbule in midfield, we've got Mokoena in the heart of midfield? So thoroughly excited with that. However, what I'm not impressed with is Thabo Cele. Another big question, where is Thabo Cele? Thabo Cele, in my opinion, performed so very well at the Olympics. He represented us with aplomb. Yes, the national team at the Olympics did struggle. However, if there was one positive and one player we could highlight and say, this guy is a shining beacon for South African football, that is Thabo Cele, in my opinion. Another midfielder who has a complete skill set, who can occupy the half spaces, who's got a bit of that deft touch and magic, and who can also then collect the ball from deep and progress the ball and also retain it very well. Disappointed not to see his name in there. So hopefully for his sake going forward that he could be a feature within the Bafana Bafana national team. And then when we look at a player like Bongani Zungu, I still think that he's got so much to contribute. However, does then the question then become, because he didn't feature much last season, does he then miss out? That could be a possibility, especially considering the fact that he went on loan on Rangers and didn't really feature there. And when you look at the players who have been called, who play his position, these are players who play consistently. And these are players who've got regular minutes with regards to their club sides. And whenever they have been called up to the national team, they have played regularly. So disappointed for those two names not to see them in there. And then moving on then right along, let's go then to the forward line players. We've got Thabiso Kutumela, we've got Hlongwane, we've got Gift Links, we've got Mahopa, we've got Litswalo, we've got Singh, we've got Percy Tau, and that forms part and parcel of the forward line players. So yet again, young, exciting, very talented forward line players who make up the rest of this Bafana Bafana squad. Very excited to see some of those players and how do they link up going forward. Mind the pun. So then when you then mention a Korisang, Mahopa, these are two players who linked up very well in the under-23 team, and very excited to see them then forming part and parcel of this national team. So one commonality, and that sticks out like a sore thumb when it comes to this national selection, is that these are players who have done well in the COSAFA Cup, players who have done well in the junior national teams. They've now graduated to Bafana Bafana. It's beautiful to see that, because we've been crying out for continuation and continuity when it comes to those players who we think should be playing at Bafana Bafana level. Players who have represented us very well at junior national teams. However, a special mention does then go out to a player who's, look, you won't really consider him as a forward, but he does get the goals and he's very good in the half spaces, very good in zone 14, and gets you quite a bit of goals for an attacking midfielder. He goes by the name of Duduzi Dantsane, who does play at Cape Town City. And yeah, I would have wanted to see him part and parcel of this Bafana Bafana side, because I think he's a hybrid of a player that in South African football we don't really have. An attacking midfielder who gets you numbers like he's a striker, but still possesses the creativity of a number 10 who can occupy the half spaces, the central zones, and then go beyond and make those runs and occupy zone 14 very well. So that is my opinion when it comes to Duduzi Dantsane. I think that is a player that should have been thoroughly integrated within Bafana Bafana. Otherwise, I must say, from an overall perspective, I'm very happy, and I think this is a young, strong, and a very dynamic team that can actually take us forward. Do I see us qualifying? Maybe it's still early to say that. Maybe let's judge after a game or two when we've seen how the boys do link up, how they form a structured and well-refined style of play. Then I'd be able to say, you know what, I think we can qualify for the World Cup. Or maybe we're off. Let's build and look for the next qualifiers, which will then be the AFCON qualifiers. But I'm thoroughly excited for this new project and this new Bafana Bafana side that Hugo Broos is building. And I look forward to what this side could really do. However, do let me know, what do you guys make of the overall complexion of this Bafana Bafana side that Hugo Broos has called upon? So moving on then right along to the extra time segment, where I do a tactical talk and a tactical preview of what I would do with this Bafana Bafana side. So I would start with a 4-2-3-1, which then transitions into a 3-5-2 whenever we're in possession of the ball. So without the ball, and when we find ourselves in the defensive phase of play, it's a 4-2-3-1. That becomes very compact. And then when we do have the ball, we spring into 3-5-2, which would look like that. However, the starting positions then would be a 4-2-3-1. So how then would I institute my 4-2-3-1, and which players would I go for? So in goals, I would go with Broos as I love how commanding he is, and how he marshals his back four. I've been very impressed with Broos. Like I mentioned early on, it's just a pity that he doesn't get regular game time. And that really breaks my heart, because I think this should be Bafana Bafana number one alongside a Goss and alongside a Peterson. Those three could be Bafana Bafana number one. They should be competing for that Bafana Bafana number one, and very disappointed that he hasn't been integrated within the Kaizer Chiefs side this season. However, in my team, Broos would start because, like I mentioned, very commanding. There's a leader in there, and his distribution skills, so he could help when it comes to starting from the back. Very comfortable on the ball. He reads the game very well, and like I mentioned, leader. The more leaders you have within the national team, the better. So Broos would then go in goals. And then this is where it gets interesting with regards to my defense. I will start from the left-hand side and then progress to the right-hand side. So the left back, who then would then also occupy the left-sided center half role, would be Musa Lebusa. So whenever we transition to a 3-5-2, he forms part and parcel of a back three. He becomes the left-sided center half. So Musa Lebusa would start in there. Very comfortable in that position. He's not going to bomb on forward and give you crosses. That's not what you look from when you look at a Lebusa. You're looking at defensive solidity. So Musa Lebusa would start in there. My two center halves that I would build with going forward, and the reason why I'd build with them, and especially with regards to this specific squad, you've got Reuck and Ngcobo. Firstly, these are two players who understand each other because of how well they done at the COSAFA Cup. They won the COSAFA Cup as a centre-back pairing. Secondly, they've got a very natural understanding how they cover each other, how they read the game, and with regards to how when one progresses the ball into midfield, one always steps across. So they've got this very natural understanding, and they read the game very well. They cover each other really well. I wouldn't say they are players who are blessed with speed, but they hardly ever get caught out by virtue of the fact that they read the game also very well. And that is very rare in South African football. When you look at these two centre halves, you're looking at OJ Mabizela-esque type players. And it's very rare that we have centre halves who are like this within South African football. So when we've got two of them plying their trade within the very same generation, these are two centre halves we should be utilizing. Those are my two centre halves. Very comfortable on the ball. And just to go in depth with regards to Ngcobo and what he possesses within his skill set. So I've mentioned his defensive abilities. I've mentioned how well he reads the game. But on a lighter note, and something which is really special about him, he's got this trick of his where he opens up and the ball would be played into him. So you find that we haven't been able to penetrate the half spaces, or we haven't been able to progress the ball into the deeper central zones, and then they pass the ball back to him. And he'll shape up as if he's going to play to the goalkeeper. And what he will do is he'll do this lovely 360 turn, and he loses the striker, and then we're on again. So this is a player that can take us from one phase of play into another phase of play with just one trick. And as a defensive player, that is very rare, because what that does for us is that it allows us the opportunity to go from a defensive phase into an offensive phase with one pass and one trick. And what it does then is that it catches the opposition off guard because they would be pressing. And when they're pressing, they think it's going to go to the keeper. The keeper's going to hoof it up. But he turns, we're out of that situation. And then we look to play. So that is one special trick that Ngcobo possesses. And then as the right back / right wing back would be Thapelo Morena, one of the best when it comes to giving width. We know that he's blessed with blistering pace and very good then when it comes to occupying certain positions and certain zones within the final third as well. I just think that if he can work on his finishing, he could be very lethal by virtue of the fact that whenever he does pop up into this space, he gets so many opportunities. If you guys remember the AFCON qualifier against Ghana, he popped up into the box where he had 2 opportunities, and if his finishing was technically well refined, he would have scored 2 goals, So if he can work on that side of his game, I think that he can profit a lot, especially when you look at the system that I would institute when it comes to this Bafana Bafana side. So then when we then have a look at the double pivot. So with the double pivot, it is an unpopular opinion. You guys do know that on Disky Talk with Liolo, I love an unpopular opinion. So as my double pivot, I would go with Mokoena, and I'd go with Yusuf Mart. So these are 2 players who are very similar in a sense, but I think they could complement each other very well by virtue of the fact that Yusuf Mart is a lot stronger in the tackle and he reads the game very well from a defensive perspective. So he's not a natural CDM, but he can protect the back 4 very well, which then complements a box-to-box Mokoena, who we do know that can pop up into the half space, pops up into the central zone, and has that long-range shot on him. So I think this would be a very good double pivot. Advancing then into the number 10 role, and a player who would be very key in complementing this midfield triangle would then be Sipho Mbule. And I think Sipho Mbule is a quality player, occupies the half spaces very well. What I like about him is that he goes one further by also then being able to manipulate when he's in zone 14. He manipulates the ball very well. He's also got an eye for goals, so he can score goals as well. And then when we look at the left wing position, so here, many options, So special mention does go to Luther Singh. However, he's not the player that I would go with because you do know that on Disky Talk with Liolo, we keep it as objective as possible. So I would go with Kodisang as my left wing player. And the reason why I'd go with Kodisang is how versatile and how adaptive he is tactically, and especially when you look at the spaces that he occupies. So this is a player who can come into the half space. He can operate out wide. He can beat his man, has speed, has the final ball and the technical ability to pick out a pinpointed cross, which is something we don't see, with regards to our players in the final third. So he can go on the outside and then he can come back on the inside. He can also start on the right-hand side. So a very complete winger in that regard who would do really well with a lot of these players that I have mentioned, and they would complement each other very well. He can keep the width. He can come on the inside. And then on the right-hand side, who would then become my right inverted winger, I would go with Percy Tau. And the reason why I'd go with Percy Tau is because he's very comfortable in this pocket of space. In this half space, very comfortable. And he would join up in zone 14. He then becomes very perfect when we transition from a 4-2-3-1 into a 3-5-2, which is something I will go into a bit later. But my number 9 then would be Evidence Makgopa. And I think there's enough evidence as to why Evidence is currently our best number 9 in the country. And you look at his skill set, you look at his finishing ability, all types of goals with him, aerially very strong, front post he can finish, back post he can finish, he can come short in there. He's also a poacher. And what I like about him is how intuitive he is and how he reads the game very well. He knows where to occupy and he knows where to be within the box. If you guys remember very well, in the Olympics, that beautiful goal he scored, front post, and a lot of people look at it and think it's just a generic tap-in. However, it's very difficult to execute that. Firstly, reading how the game is progressing. Secondly, being able then to be intertwined with your winger, which was Korisang then, who beat his man. As he beat his man, that's when he starts his movement. And then when he gets into this position, that's when he attacked the near post. When he attacks the near post, Korisang delivers, he taps in. We don't see too much of that within the DStv Premiership. We don't have many players who can do that. And when you have a player of his caliber, I believe he has to start. So then that would then be my 4-2-3-1. That's how we would start. But let's move on then and go into tactical depth and deeper analysis with regards to what would I do and which shape, which system, and which channels would we be looking to overload, and how would I institute my philosophy and style of play whenever we do transition from a 4-2-3-1 into a 3-5-2. So in a 4-2-3-1, that would be the shape. But now we go into a 3-5-2. So Mokoena gives us the width, high and wide. Ngcobo goes, becomes our right-sided centre half. Reuck becomes our libero. Musa Lebusa becomes our left-sided centre half. KK gives us the width on the left-hand side. And then Percy Tau joins Makgopa up front. And that's how it becomes a 3-5-2. And that's how I'll transition from a 4-2-3-1 into a 3-5-2. However, let's look at it when we're in possession in the opposition half. Which spaces, which channels, and which zones are we looking to penetrate and overload so that we can have a numerical advantage, which then leads to chance creation, which then leads to goals. So whenever we are in the opposition half, we're obviously looking to keep hold of the ball. We're looking to circulate the ball as quick as possible, shift the opposition into territory which is very suitable and favorable for us, which then gets the likes of Percy Tau in and also gets Makgopa in to goal. So how then would I institute that? So we've got Mokoena, who's high and wide on the right-hand side. We would then have Mokoena there. You'd have Yusuf Mat. You'd have Mbule as well. And then we've got our three. So from an offensive perspective now, this then somewhat becomes a 3-6-1 in a sense, you know. So when you look at this channel, when you look at this zone, we've got 6 players in there. So that's an overload. That is a positive overload from an offensive perspective because we're able then to rotate the ball very well. And there could be triangulation. We create triangles. We keep the ball and we keep it moving very quickly, you know, which then opens up certain half spaces and opens up certain channels for Makgopa to benefit and Percy Tau as well. So that's what we're looking at. However, the duality that comes with the Percy Tau is that he can go there, and then it becomes a 3-5-2 in the opposition half. From an offensive perspective, that's what we're looking at. And you're looking at Mbule on this side, occupying this half space. You will manipulate the ball very well. On this side, Mokoena. Then you've got Yusuf Mat sitting there. And what I like about this midfield is that they could all interchange because they're all very comfortable on the ball. So you could have that fluid dynamic positional play being instituted amongst the three of them. They keep rotating possession, not just the ball. And then you've got your 3 center halves in there. And what I like about this is that when we lose the ball, we've got the right amount of numbers in the right spaces. So if we ever get hit with the counter, we're forcing the opposition to go wide because these guys just quickly come in, compact. And then before you know it, we've got this defensive block. We've got a defensive block of a 3-3. And then it becomes very difficult for them to break us down, you know. And we can also build, in a sense, with this 3-3 block, you know. So that's what I like about it. Offensively, it's very aggressive. Defensively, there's also so much cover. So it's got duality and tactically versatile. And what I like then about this system is that whenever it does transition into a 3-5-2, is that, like I always mention, guys, my philosophy and my understanding of football is that you should create a well-refined, clear-cut system and structure of play which predicates for consistency throughout the squad. So it's not just for your best 11 players, but it's for those players who can come off the bench and impact the game. And when you look at it from this perspective, if anything happens to a Lebusa, you've got a Tabani Dube who can come in and play as a left-sided centre half. If anything happens to one of our players in the double pivot, you've got a Sitebe who plays in a double pivot at Amazulu, and sometimes in a midfield three. He can come in for either one of these two, and he can also go and play as a more advanced midfielder. If anything happens to Mbule, you could have Nkulisi, maybe use him as a 10, use him as a playmaker, So when you then look at it from a forward line perspective, you've got Victor Lutualo, who's very similar to the mold of Mahopa, who's a number 9, traditional number 9. You've got a Kutumela, who can sort of play as that mobile forward line player. So I think this system then is perfect and would predicate for consistency throughout the squad, irrespective of what would happen. You do know it would start as a 4-2-3-1 and then transition into a 3-5-2. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've thoroughly enjoyed breaking down the Bafana Bafana selection and having a look at some of these very, very special players and what they can do. So we do know that whenever a new coach comes in, the notion is always, yes, we need to build a project. However, this is what I believe. A, I believe we've got quality footballers. Secondly, I think that with these players that we have, if they've got the right determination and the right hunger, they can go out and compete and actually help us to qualify for the World Cup. Yes, it's early days, but if we do things in the right manner and we're adequate and we tick all the boxes and Hugo Broos is able to institute a style of play which would predicate for consistency, I think this squad can do well. And I really mean that, I really, really mean that, However, at the same time, I do understand that it's early days, it's the dawn of a new Bafana Bafana, and my hat goes off to Hugo Broos for this very objective selection, and picking players who really deserve to be a part and parcel of this squad. So, at home, do let me know, what do you guys make of this squad? Do you think that this squad will be able to compete? Or do you feel like some of those big names who have been omitted should be in the squad? You're looking at players like your Temba Zwane, you're looking at Bongani Zungu, you're looking at Jali, you're looking at Rivaldo Kotsia. These are players who formed part and parcel of the national team in previous years who've got that experience. What do you guys make of that? And do you guys foresee us qualifying for the World Cup? Or do you think that, hey, we're just building and it's just Vision 2020 all over again, and we're just visioning, and we're always building, we never see the final product? So thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Disky Talk with Luyolo. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Yes, a new feature that is part and parcel of Disky Talk with Luyolo are the ads. Please do watch through the ads, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Signing out.